Okay, just for the record, it's been a while, and I'm out of practice on actually writing, or even editing anything for review purposes, or to have a casual, let's talk about a reaction video. The channel's been dead for a while for a reason. I'm basically retired and spend most of my time either working overtime hours at my job for Amazon, or making 3D print items that I sell on Etsy. I'm getting fairly good at it, but designing these for sale is a time-consuming process, and there's only so much of me to go around. But there will be people who have watched my vids and enjoyed them in the past that doesn't pop in on the streams, or follow me on Blue Sky that doesn't know that I'm effectively retired from doing the video reviewer thing. If you didn't, there you go. And frankly, I haven't tried my Easy Talk format since that Xenosaga video I did last year, because the editing program I was using for that stopped responding and refused to accept any media files I tried to put into it as valid. And as my current computer doesn't like the editing software I'd been using since I started the video reviewer thing and refuses to install it, and I refuse to pay a subscription fee for software that's in fact terrible and not user-friendly at all, I've been without a way to actually edit videos or even access my old editing files for over a year. This is also why I've not tried to just restore lost videos to accessible formats. I literally can't edit them anymore, or even have the capacity to upload them to anywhere else. But with all of that out of the way, yay! New .hack game is coming! When I redid the early parts of the retrospective again to make everything I could YouTube compatible, I had some far-fetched hopes, but they were just that, far-fetched. I wasn't realistically expecting anything more than finally getting re-releases of the iMock games, which CyberConnect 2 said for years was solely on Bandai to allow them to do. And with Bandai having Sword Art Online to make their chosen VR isekai franchise, there were low odds on it coming back even for that re-release, despite .hack GU Last Recode on launch selling better than the SAO games released around it. And as for people wanting to counter that Last Recode didn't have strong sales at launch, well, you gotta remember that Last Recode released within a week of Super Mario Odyssey. Yeah, they were not going to compete with a Nintendo flagship IP release that was acting as the larger purchase priority for an entirely new console. You've got to cut the remaster re-release of an overlooked game franchise some slack on that. Now, I'm basing some statements on varied interviews that have gotten out in the last week, mainly from RPG Gamer and Gematsu articles, as well as some tangential stuff I've heard from other sites, but basically are all reporting the same core information. But apparently this new .hack game, .hack Z.E.R.O, spelled Z.E.R.O, has been in the works in one form or another for the last decade, probably right around when Lost Recode's release happened. Whether it's been in full production at all that time, or it's just taken that long due to the nature of game development in the modern age, or it's been a back burner project they've been scheming while doing other contract work for Bandai and others, and their own original works like Fuga Melodies of Steel, well, it's just too soon to tell all the details since the trailer only popped this week. There's going to be more news and published articles in Japan with more details that will release in March, so we'll know more then. Right now we just have the most minute of teaser trailers, but it's at least something, and from what I've seen, the .hack fans I have any level of contact with in my circles are hyped. Though, of course, not without reservations, and there's speculation on what .hack Z.E.R.O is. Well, first and foremost, we know what it's not. It is 1, not an adaptation of the .hack Z.E.R.O light novel series Michiko Yokote wrote. Hiroshi Matsuyama has admitted that flat out that the two are not to be confused with one another, even though that is going to be confusing in discussion of the game because of it. According to the company, they went with the name Z.E.R.O in caps and with the periods between each letter as if it were an acronym, or major piece of technology from the Gundam Seed series, because they tried 100 different names and none of them quite worked to describe the project, which is concerning in and of itself, as usually when you name something Zero, you think of nothing, a void, Lelouch v. Britannia's identity as a hero of justice that was wrongfully stolen from him, the Ultraman character, the Mega Man character, the worst season of Red vs. Blue, some other non-sequitur fictional character that used the name, take your pick, or more realistically, going back to the beginning, back to zero. And the trailer kind of infers they're doing that. Which brings us to 2. Despite the trailer showing off some things reminiscent of the IMOC era storyline, it is not a remaster of Infection, Mutation, Outbreak, and Quarantine. CyberConnect 2 members in interviews have confirmed that detail. It is a brand new game, not the original games with the new paint job. Which brings us to where we can be more speculative. Is it a reimagining of the IMOC era games with their future monetized stylization a la what was done for the 2016 Ratchet & Clank game? Or worse, DMC Devil May Cry? Or is it a completely new game and storyline that is just echoing the earlier parts of the storyline that came before it? And there's weight for both options there since, again, from these initial interviews, it's inferred that the game is set in the 2030s. Similar to how all the other games in the series thus far, with exception to .hack GU Reconnection, like to set themselves in the not-too-distant future. Obligatory MST3K joke here.
In the not-too-distant future, next Sunday afternoon.
Now, I got into this discussion a bit on my Blue Sky account back on Monday when the announcement originally took place. Again, I worked the front half of the week, so between that and no editing program, there's a reason this is coming out days after the initial announcement. But the evidence of it being a reimagining is the teaser trailer focuses on characters that look similar to Kite and Black Rose, the main characters of the original IMOC games, as well as one that looks similar to Balmug, and thus also Shugo and Reina from .hack Legend of the Twilight, and the lead characters of .hack Quantum, and the lead characters of .hack Beyond the World. And from there, the idea of it being a reimagining kind of breaks down because, well, CyberConnect 2 has a thing about appearance cloning the .hack cast. And to be fair, the primary setting of the .hack series is inside of a video game. You're inevitably going to have character clones be a thing. It's been a plot point at multiple points in the series. Black Rose with Mimiru, Subaru with the player killer Kouten, Orca and Bear sharing a character model, Shino and Adelie sharing a character model, and that being one of Haseo's triggers for his emotional trauma that actually helps him work through it over time as he bonds with Adelie. The Azure Knights that are literally zombified versions of Kite, Balmug, and Orca's character data. Reiko Pai Saeki in .hack Quantum using the Shadow Warlock character model Aina used in .hack GU. This is a thing that keeps happening within the series. And these new designs, from what little we saw, seem to draw aesthetic inspirations from the short-lived .hack mobile games Guilty Dragon and New World, where they once again did the same thing. We have Kite and Black Rose at home! The Kite and Black Rose at home. So in those terms, it does seem less likely that they're going the reimagining route, and this may likely be a brand new story with new characters that just look similar to the old ones because this is the newest modern version of the world MMORPG the story is set in, and thus that's the designs for those character models in this newest iteration. But the game also stated to have a larger focus on real-world events alongside it and not just in PC news bits and social media boards. Now again, in modern media, we're not exactly devoid of this character clone thing occurring. The palette swap or homage reminiscent thing is pretty prevalent if you know where to look. So many of the lead Gundams of that franchise sharing the same color scheme, for example. Or if you're at all familiar with the works of Type Moon and their Fate franchise, you know that they have a similar phenomenon known as the Saber Face, where the main artists for that franchise like creating either new variants of Arturia Saber Pendragon, or making other historical figures to look similar to the Fate franchise's incarnation of King Arthur. Primarily because Arturia's voice actress Ayako Kawasumi, who .hack fans know better as Chigusa Adelie Kusaka, really enjoys voicing most of the characters that share Arturia's appearance. She's not the actress for every Saber Face, but she's the voice actress for a lot of them to the point it's an in-fandom joke. And most of the Saber Faces end up distinctly portrayed from one another and have their own aesthetic differences beyond their facial structure to distinguish themselves. And this is the leeway CyberConnect has over doing this as other franchises do it as well. To an extent. Because the problem is, again, with this comparison, each of the Saber Faces are distinct enough from one another. In .hack, though, it's a narrative shortcut for their powers and abilities. Kite's a Twin Blade user, so that becomes the primary means of fighting for most of the franchise in the characters you control in the games. Even Haseo with his multi-weapon classes still primarily uses Twin Blades up until the point Reconnection has him take up the Gate of Ouroboros. Yes, I have been remaking this as a purchasable 3D print design. I'm still working on finishing it because time got away from me. Again. But in turn, just generically sticking with that Twin Blade as your go-to, and repeatedly making most of the protagonists just keep echoing Kite in big and small ways, it acts to devalue all the other protagonists by proxy into just being kite clones echoing what he did. It can unintentionally make these other stories seem like they don't have merit because only this one guy was ever made important. And the Legend of the Twilight manga, the one time this was really justified in universe due to the main characters winning a contest for those specific models, is a really strong story that shouldn't be overshadowed by that. Nor should the other characters made into kite clones. They should be able to stand on their own merits for good or for ill. And thus, this is once again a concern for the new game and the new story that's getting told, that from what the trailer showed and the interviews and tangential information we have on hand, does seem to be what they're doing. Now, more information that will be coming will further clarify or refute this idea, but my personal theory for the moment is Z.E.R.O may be intentionally echoing the IMOC game storyline, but with it set in the future again, likely the 2030s. When the .hack storyline ended with the Thanatos report, the Ma conspiracy storyline was, thankfully, on its last legs, but Aura had been captured and locked away outside of the system. So from what we saw from the trailer, well, what if someone in-universe is trying to redo IMOC's larger events, but through the proxy of GU, essentially acting to fuse the major points of the three storylines together? For those who don't know or may not remember, because the series has been dormant for so long, the main lore that established the setting of .hack GU is, after the events of the Legend of the Twilight Bracelet manga, the Ultimate AI Aura removed herself from the MMO setting, the world, that the .hack games primarily take place in. The central systems of the world are a black box artificial intelligence creation system that uses experience data harvested from the players of the MMO, through which to create human sentience level AI with actual human thoughts and emotions as the basis through contextual learning. You know, instead of what generative AI is and just regurgitating junk inputs it's been trained on, as generative AI isn't actual artificial intelligence. Regardless, the original controller of the system, Morgana Mode Gone, was the thing that went crazy in the first era of the setting, because the runners of the MMO, CC Corp, considered the junk AIs the system generated to be anomalous data and started deleting them, thus allowing Morgana to conceptualize the terror of death, and that she would die when Aura was completed. Her trying to stop her own death and Aura's proper birth is the focus of .hack's Sign and the IMOC games, after which Aura took over command of that system when Morgana was eventually killed. But when Aura left after the Legend of the Twilight manga, it ultimately broke the system that managed the game, with no one to internally run it anymore. Thus, GU's backstory happened when CC Corp then tried to recreate an Aura-like AI using the fragments of the AI creation system that had been part of Morgana, and it blew up in their faces, with those programs then turned into the 8 avatars that then became active plot points through the GU games and beyond. While the AI creation system that went even crazier and started generating artificial intelligence data anomalies, despite no longer having the means to bridge the gap between player experiences and the AI conceptualizing their meaning. Thus why the IDA that were created acted so much like parasites to do the damage they did in the GU game storyline before that matter was ultimately settled. Then, in the Mama Conspiracy storyline that makes up .hack Link, Quantum, and the Beyond the World related media, we have a group of ecological terrorists that think shoving people into computers to save the Earth is a good idea and want an ultimate AI to act as the gatekeeper running this virtual prison, ignoring how the computers they want to trap everyone in need routine maintenance, and if no one's going to get out, everyone trapped inside will just die instead, as we're not exactly at a tech level in the series where people can just exist as living data independent of a central server forever. If you want a plot point like that, you've got to wait for the Mega Man Battle Network Timelines anime series, or the Star Force run, Kamen Rider Xaid, or the future people of Kamen Rider Geats, where yes, that is a thing in those series.
ようこそ究極のゲームの世界バグスターが人間を攻略して 人類を滅亡させるゲームだ。
But .hack never reaches the point where such can be internally justified. It just comes off crazy there. The Little Tail Bronx series CyberConnect makes reaches that point, but .hack really does not. So, where I'm going with this is, what if they're doing all of that again at the same time? What if someone wants to recreate an Aura-like AI again, since she was last seen missing in action in the series, and thus is intentionally recreating the steps that allowed her to be born as the ultimate AI in the first place, including proxies for the principal players in those events? What if the similarities to past characters are deliberate? If the black boxed AI creation files are still in play, that could include that Akashic record stuff from Link that exploits echoes of the series' past, to be able to implant those factors into other, newer people to string them along the past storyline in echoing it. This could explain the idol-like proto-aura that pops up for a moment in the new trailer, Skaith's wand, and a less controlled version of the Twilight bracelet the new Kite model character has. If they're intentionally being used as proxies for other people from the past, that justifies the character similarities and makes such narratively important. It would make the franchise's past relevant without making new players slave to it because the plot isn't about the past. It's about history repeating itself because those in power who are forcing this encore upon the world haven't learned anything from that past. Now, do I think they're actually doing that? I have no idea, and probably not. Like I said, at this point, we've had a teaser and some minor clarifying information. We're fully in the wild mass guessing phase of everything right now. Hell, from everyone listed as involved in the project, I have not seen a single writing credit, just designers and directors. And none of those roles they have credits for have writing as part of their production role. Directors are not writers, and should not be thought of as more important than the writer, even if the production of media like this is a collaborative process. Meaning we don't even know who wrote .hack Z.E.R.O yet, even though that is an essential role. And if it's not Kazunori Ito or Tatsuya Hamazaki involved, well, the franchise hasn't had a consistent track record for any writer beyond them or their understudies. Now, that's not to say that .hack Z.E.R.O will be bad if it doesn't involve either of the two primary scribes for the series. I'm just saying that without accreditation of a writer, we don't quite know what to expect yet. And to be fair, CyberConnect 2 has been on a roll for several years with both modest and more widespread successes. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot and its multitude of updates and expansions has been the most in-depth recreation of the Dragon Ball universe ever made in game form, and expand on the setting in a whole host of fantastic ways. Even if a variety of important bits of it have been left out, that can make the game frustrating. But it still sold 10 million units as of this year, which is massive for any game in a current market. The Demon Slayer games have seen immense adoration from fans of that franchise. Fuga Melodies of Steel went over so well it got 2 sequels that pushed back development on the other parts of their Trilogy of Vengeance game series, with them saying they'll have news about the second planned part of it, Cecile, very soon. I was actually expecting news on Cecile over a return to .hack when they said they were making a game announcement this week. Hell, their other major game remaster, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure All-Star Battle, went over very well with people by including cast and characters that hadn't been in the original PS3 iteration of the game. And them doing all of that with a team of around 300 people in only a few locations. The company has released good game after good game that have helped keep the lights on, so I highly doubt they're going to botch the return to one of their core franchises. Especially after announcing that Bandai have all but given them the rights to the .hack IP back, and are allowing them to self-manage production of the franchise themselves going forward. Meaning, yeah, fans that still want to remaster just a re-release of the IMOC games, we can pester CyberConnect for that properly now instead of Bandai, as you are supposed to have been doing for the last decade. And it's entirely possible that's been in the works as well if Bandai isn't still restricting them from doing it for some reason. However, there's still part of me that keeps saying to curb my expectations. Because, frankly, disregarding the new content that came in with Last Recode, where I still have conflicting feelings over the events of Reconnection, well, .hack ended on a very sour note with the Mama Conspiracy storyline. Not making that be the endpoint of the franchise is a very good thing, but that won't necessarily make what they're doing now better by default. And we're at a point in time where, frankly, almost every franchise I have ever cared about has had a bad ending, gotten screwed over, or I have felt betrayed by it at some point into hating anything it does after that given event. Like, I was going to write a massive list of what happened to each and every one of them that's been so badly hit, but I can just name them, and it's a good ballpark that fans of them will have an idea of what I'm talking about. So, with .hack coming back, I do want to be hopeful. I do. But I've spent the last several years watching nearly everything I have ever been invested in or became invested in as a replacement for other things that went bad, turn to absolute shit or be murdered instead of being allowed to naturally come to a good, satisfying end I can look back on with fondness and then revisit positively after. As so many bridges got burned by the things that went bad, I can't find enjoyment in them again anymore. I am beyond jaded at this point. It's one of several reasons I had to stop doing the reviewer thing. It was starting to leak through excessively. And this is the franchise that brought me back from the brink of killing myself 18 years ago. I don't want its comeback to end up being bad, and I don't necessarily expect it to end up being bad. But because of everything, I can't help but prepare for the possibility if the worst case scenario somehow comes to pass. So, with that said, what do we do if it is bad? Well, got no better options but just to move on. There's been other series out there that do things similar to .hack that have been made, even if it's not in-game or multimedia formats, say. I mentioned Kaoru's Z.E.R.O and Geats earlier. Well, yeah, their writer Yuya Takahashi has them run on game logic, and those and his other works all have story elements that run parallel to the .hack series. A character in Kaoru Z.E.R.O even gaining abilities that run parallel to Data Drain, and a lot of the enemies in those series have, well, end results that echo things that .hack antagonist characters have done. Mega Man Battle Network's timeline got a collection so those games are easily playable with its similar cyberspace setting. And the Star Force games are soon to have their own with a better take on real digitalization than .hack Link and Versus ever introduced. There are some other non-Sword Art Online media like Log Horizon or Death's End Request that does that trapped in a game scenario and play with it in differing ways. The Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth game duology does something similar of a premise to the novel .hack Cell. And Xenoblade Chronicles 3 actually does have its plot explained best by cosmic-level simulation theory and a rogue Morgana mode gone like AI going haywire. But best context of that only really comes from playing its predecessor games, so there's 3 long RPGs and their side stories right there to enjoy, as well if you're not a fan of that series already. There are series that can scratch the desired .hack itch if this doesn't end up being a revival, but the last straw. Even if they aren't exactly like .hack, they only do some of the things that are part of the larger .hack package that fans, including myself, love. It'll suck massively if .hack 0 ends up happening and being bad, but the healthy thing sometimes is to just move on instead of, become a rage-baiting asshole about it. But there's always still the chance something good will come out of it even then. And I'd like to leave this video off on that thought, as Z.E.R.O's presumably going to be set in the 2030s, and .hack has this prevalence to homage past characters and the continuance of their lives through Easter eggs or inclusions in the latter stories. The IMOC games had crossover events with the Signcast. The novel AI Buster was followed up on in Legend of the Twilight Bracelet. IMOC characters appeared as both big and small cast members and cameos in GU, such as Sora, Sieg, Wiseman, and Elkin Sign, IMOC and Liminality, becoming Haseo, Kun, Yada, and Endrance in GU, and Pieros and Natsume showing up as well. The character Pi was a major player in the events of the Mama Conspiracy storyline in supporting the other focused-upon characters, as did the character Flugel from Link. And GU Reconnection established Haseo had gone to work for the Network Administration Bureau to help save Ovan, and presumptively stayed with them through the following Mama Conspiracy events. So if Z.E.R.O is a new continuation, some of the past characters could come back once again and play a part in new events to see where the stories of their lives have gone. So if Z.E.R.O is a new continuation, some of the past characters could come back once again and play a part in new events. And if that happens, the question becomes, who will be back and what forms will we see them in? Did Haseo and Adelie finally start dating and get married? Will we see anything of the original Kite and Blackrose? Are Tsukasa and Subaru still together? Is Tokyo even still a thing? As you have to realize, with this being presumptively set in the 2030s, most of the cast we cared about in the past will be in their 30s and 40s. They can serve that adult mentor or supporter role for the new cast members. Or CyberConnect could accidentally end up pulling a boneheaded move and repeat the widespread character assassination it pulled on the Legacy Heroes in .hack Link again, only not through Akashic Record proxies this time. I again doubt they will end up doing that at this point, but when you've done it once, the concern will always be there that it will occur again. It just never leaves. Hopefully that won't be what happens, but we'll be seeing how that goes regardless when we have more information. I'm Shinta. Don't expect me to do another update video like this on the Z.E.R.O project, though I will be streaming the game when it eventually releases. We just have to wait for that to occur. Later, everybody.